Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Over It podcast. I'm your co-host, Suzanne Kohlberg, joined as always by the fabulous Kristan Kershaw. And today's topic is an interesting one. It's when self-soothing becomes self-harm. And before we really dive into it, what for you, Kristan, are what you would consider self-soothing behaviours? Perhaps we should have done a bit of research and Googled the definition of it. But for everybody, and I encourage for you guys listening, what is a self-soothing behaviour or series of behaviours for you?
For me, it's sitting playing on my iPad or watching mind-numbing TV of some sort, or possibly both. So sometimes I'll watch quality TV like Australian Idol or The Voice or any of those sorts of things. And then I'll just I'll listen to the vocab of what's going on, like the audio, and I'll be sitting playing games. And I've got one game in particular we've been in this household doing for years. And it's interesting because the self-soothing kind of wind me down from a big day or whatever of that. Yeah, Gardenscapes it's called. And this sort of wind down of that is, okay, I might play half an hour until I run out of lives or whatever. But is that really beneficial? Like the topic of this is, when does that become problematic? So, I just got some bonus time. I'll keep doing it. I can already see myself. A lot of the time I have self-control or whatever you might like. I just get sick of it after a period of time. And that's my wind down time. But there are times when I do get unlimited, infinite lives, or one of the bonuses that they have intentionally to suck you in. Sometimes I'll just leave it and I'll be like, oh, that cuts because I've just been given this free extra time type thing. But it's liberating to then go, actually, I don't need to sit there and do that anymore. But how many people get sucked into hours and hours of playing those games or paying for it? I'm cheap. I won't pay for extras in games 99% of the time. But that's a choice that I made. No judgment on anyone else who chooses to, because that might be your thing. But for me, that's me knowing that I've been sucked into it deeper than what I want to go. And so that's a boundary for me. And that
I love this. I'm just going to interrupt you there because this is a whole topic within a topic. It's like Inception. I don't mind throwing a few dollars a couple of times a week at a game because from my point of view, the app creators spend how much time making it. I'm paying them with my energy and my time. What's a few bucks? And, I think it's a win-win, but I can totally see where you're coming from. Whereas, I don't want to put money towards this. And I think we all have agency and we all have the decisions. And if you've made that decision, so like for me, it's the amount of money I will spend. And as an aside and related to this, Xanthi and I have been watching Fire Country. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's a TV show. And one of the main characters has a gambling addiction. And they're really exploring it deeply. And he's lost the house. He's borrowed money off friends. And they're talking about how often we can, dig ourselves literally and figuratively in these holes by not speaking out and not asking for proper support. And Xanthi was like, well, I'm just never going to gamble. And I'm like, well, that's the choice that you choose, 100%. I appreciate that. And she's like, do you gamble, mummy? I haven't in years, honestly, not since I had kids, but I used to have a little dabble, a little flutter at the casino. And I said to her, but when I do, I have chosen ahead of time how much I will spend, similar to the games. This is how much I'll spend in a week. That's the boundary there. And it's not saying I have to spend it, but I think, and this is the very epitome of this whole topic of this episode, when does self-soothing become self-harm? Because, gambling is a thing that you could go and have a flutter, spend a few dollars, have a bit of fun, have a laugh and walk away. Or you could be literally betting your house and having everything on the line. That is a self-harming type behavior. And I think there's no clear definition, because for one person, spending a couple of dollars might be, you're not attached to whether you win or lose, or it's a bit of fun. But for another person, they don't have that amount of money to gamble with, or to them it seems irresponsible. And I don't think it's for anyone to decide where that line is for somebody else, but it's from within yourself. So I love those examples. So you used, watching TV or, quality TV versus trashy TV. And even the definition, like you said, quality TV, like Australian Idol. I was muted at the time, but I did have a little giggle as I drank my water because I was like, to me, that wouldn't be quality TV. Not judging you for
It was
that.
sarcastic. No, it was
it was totally intended. Voice.
Yeah. It was totally sarcastic. No, not at all. As in, some people love it and that's their thing. I can just sit there with it being mind-numbingly, the drama that ensues.
It's like me in The Bachelor. I totally love it, but it's because to me it's so trash. But then again, to someone else, they might really enjoy that. And that's, once again, it's never a judgment about what you find quality, because my mum watches whichever one's showing right now. I don't know. I don't watch the singing
Australian
shows.
Idol.
Is that the one? Yep. Have you seen it? And one young man tried out in one state, and then his grandmother paid for him to try out in another state, and then Carl Sanderling gave him the money back. And probably spoiler alert. But my mum was like, "Oh, it's so heartbreaking," and it was like, "Well, it could be, or it could be just done for ratings. You never know."
And this is the thing, like even with the game, I will occasionally do it. Although the first time I did it, my kids are like, "You what? You never spend money on this game," but that's just because I was like, you know what? I'm actually wanting to try some of the extra features and some of the extra things, but it's all a part of agency and that choice, right? And for me, I don't care if someone chooses to spend money on it. I would just prefer to put that into, say, my pub choir tickets, which is another self-soothing thing that I do leading into that. So I go and sing with somewhere between 1,500 and a couple thousand people in a room and sing a song that we get taught on the night. And once a month-ish, I go and do that. And I find that soothing and whatever, whereas I don't know that could become self-harm too easily, but
it would depend, and I suppose
if you're drinking a lot,
definition, maybe. If you're drinking a lot, or if, like for me, I don't think I would find that self-soothing, not necessarily self-harming though, just the crowd, like the amount of people. I don't know if I would ever, but I was having a discussion with a friend earlier today, and we were talking about like going out for a meal. And to some people, it's fabulous. It's a night out, it's a connection, you don't have to cook and whatever. To me, I'm not saying I don't ever enjoy a meal out, but it's usually noisy. I'm a bit particular. Some would say fussy about how I like my things done, to whether I would fully enjoy it. Like there's things where you could be like, yeah, I'll eat that, like it's passable, versus like, to me, this was fabulous. And I think this is looking at it for different people. Like you and I are both on the more introverted side. I know you say you're an introverted extrovert, but like similar things to what you talked about. I like, the certain apps on my phone. I like watching things on television. I like diamond dotting. I like walking, like, and taking photos and checking out new places, like as in by myself or a small, like maybe just one child. I know you like gardening, and there might be some things that you could think, oh, how could that ever become self-harm? But I'm thinking exercise. Like for me, that's how I injured my back many years ago. I pushed myself far beyond my capability and my capacity. And part of me was like, you shouldn't do this. And I ignored that spidey sense intuition and hence ended up in an injury. So things done to excess, or things that on the surface look like, I'm thinking things that become into, like, I'm not wanting to talk about mental health or outside our scope, but like things like washing your hands. Yes, helpful, but to the point where your hands are bleeding because it becomes an obsession, harmful. So it's like everything I think is on a spectrum.
Yeah, definitely. And on the exercise example, or, things that may not seem too bad, but actually can go into self-harm. I myself, after my youngest, when she was in her, she was not little, like not newborn, but she might have only been a year, maybe 18 months old. I was jogging 3 times a week, I think, doing 5Ks, definitely at least once a week. I would take our dog out and I would go for a jog. Now, that in itself seems okay, right? Except every time, 2 days afterwards, I would get a migraine. Within like minutes of 2 days after, I would get a migraine from it. So I'd recover from one migraine and then basically do another run or walk. And I was generally running, jogging. So I was physically able to do it without feeling particularly tired or anything. But my body actually was in such a worn out state. It took me a while to connect that it was the running that was causing it. I was getting more and more of these migraines. They were more and more severe. And it felt like that was my escape time, right? From the stress of an unwell baby, and I'm looking after myself because I'm going to get fit or maintain my fitness, because I was jogging while pregnant with her until 32 weeks. And for anyone that doesn't know where I am, I'm in Western Brisbane in a really hilly area. And I literally would jog up and down the hills here while heavily pregnant-ish. I had a little basketball under my shirt, or so it seemed. And I only stopped because I couldn't expand my lungs down far enough. It wasn't the belly bobbing or anything else. It was actually that I just couldn't breathe deep enough. And then I just took to walking. So I maintained that. And even the day before I had her, I did quite a long walk to try and encourage her to arrive. But what I worked out is I was overdoing it. My body was my adrenals were worn out. And what I learned in retrospect is it was far too much, even though I physically could do the exercise without, I would come back, be a bit sweaty, but I was fine. I wasn't getting sore muscles. I wasn't particularly overtired or anything. But my body couldn't cope with the stress of that exertion. And so I started to walk the 5 kilometers instead of run it. And you know what? No migraines. So it brought me back in. It was definitely turning to self-harm. And more I look at the scenario when a client comes to me going, I've got this list of things going on, and we talk about what, and then they'll say, oh, and I go to the gym 6 days a week, and then I do this, and then I do that. And they're telling me this list of things where their body is absolutely exhausted. And then they're doing a lot of exercise. Exercise is important for mental health, for physical health, all of that. I'm not denying that. But you have to start to look through your own lens of what is soothing, what is healthy, and what is being done. Many of the times it's escapism on some level. So like me, it was time away from the smothering of a baby that never wants to be put down or ever put down at all, even as a toddler, and all sorts of stuff, because she felt sick. She felt horrible. So she needed soothing from me, but I had to find another way that was not so self-harming. And you know what? Now, however many years later, I'm starting to do more exercise of different types to diversify, because again, I can do 5Ks easily. I've maintained that fitness. I've never gone back to jogging, interestingly, because the older I get, the more I go, I don't think my joints need this. I'm not running. It's like I was running from something. Now, the metaphorical, what are you running away from, is something that I'll often mention to a client who does a lot of exercise. Or what is the purpose behind it? It's one thing to want to be fit. It's another to, oh, well, I have to be fit for this, this, and this. Are you trying to prove it for someone else, for yourself? There's a lot more to that.
I think you've raised so many excellent points there. Just allowing ourselves to zoom out and have a look at, why am I doing this thing? Like, what deeper need is it serving? And is there another way? Because I imagine for many of us parents, time away from our children, there's a level of guilt associated with it. But if you're exercising, well, that's okay then. It's allowed. And this leads me to another self-soothe into self-harm activity, which is eating. Like, we can eat and have it be nourishing, and we can have, and then sometimes people say to me, so you're saying that I can only ever eat foods that are nourishing or whatever. Like, you can have a chocolate bar, a piece of cake, whatever. Like, I'm going to make myself hungry just listing the foods here, and have it be soothing, like really, really enjoying. Like, when we're in Queensland, we don't have it down here in New South Wales that I've seen. If you're a New South Wales person, you're going to correct me. Please don't, because I like living in my bubble, because this is one that could become self-harm if I'm not. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's Cinnabon. I don't know. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about? I saw it on the Gold Coast. Cinnabon.
It could be a Gold Coast thing. I'm not familiar with it. The name is familiar, but I'm not sure.
They had it at Pack Fair, and basically it was this little like cinnamon cross between a donut and a scroll. It was delicious. Anthony and I were like, oh, this is the best thing we've ever had. I am a stickler for sweets. And the other thing I love is vanilla slice, but it's so hard to get a good vanilla slice because not many independent bakeries exist anymore, and the chains don't tend to sell them, and the supermarket ones are just whatever. Anyway, I know I can make them in a Thermomix, but then I end up with enough for a family. And if there's enough for a family, guess what? I will eat the amount there because I don't want it to go to waste. Anyway, the reason I'm going there is a lot of us, what we truly need, as you said, is a break from our children, a few minutes to ourselves, something, but we don't allow ourselves that. But exercise, we allow, eating, we need to eat to live, like girls got to eat. So that's how it can sneak in. And even things, I loved you use the example of your gardenscapes, and I have a few different ones. I'm currently obsessed with Royal Match. But I like the ones that have, as you said, a limited amount of lives, but then watching when you get the unlimited lives, the time suck and how it draws you in, all this sort of thing. But there can be so much guilt associated with because this isn't productive. And we've become a society that values productivity over everything else in general. It's a generalization, but I'm saying in general. And it's like, what about times of old where people would tell folk stories or paint or, wander around galleries and things like that? What was that, if not, receptive times?
Well, exactly. It's interesting because the number of times where I even catch us doing this to the littlest one, we might be watching TV, which is really, it's not inappropriate for her age, but just not interesting for her age. So the two 16-year-olds, 10-year-old and husband and I, and she will sit there, and even if it's something that she's loosely interested in, she will often be playing on her iPad or doing something else while having it on. And I see especially the two older kids, and to a degree, my husband and I, be like, just focus on the show. Sometimes it's a show we're watching for her too, I might add. And she's not really fully engaged with it. But then I'm like, because she's got such a strong role model in doing exactly the same thing. Like, you can't, it's a bit of pot calling the kettle black there. But at the same time, it's that self-awareness of she just wants to be around us. Realistically, there's a self-soothing of we're there as a family unit, we're spending time together, even if it's that. But how many of us have family members who might have crocheted or knitted or whatever? It's doing something with your hands. It's just the modern version of that, maybe with an iPad. With crocheting or whatever, you'll at times have to look down at it. You might be able to get into a rhythm where you're not having to watch all the time. Is that really any different?
And you've raised such a good point here too, in that sometimes our self-soothing behaviors are stacked. So, as you said, scroll that game while listening to a program, kind of half watching it, or, walking and listening to a podcast. Shout out to anybody who's doing that with us right now. Hello. Stacking our behaviors. And then is that in service, or is that us attempting to multitask? Because sometimes, in terms of reality TV, as I said, I'm a Batchy fan, I'll own it, but I've never sat and watched an episode. I am scrolling, crafting, diamond dotting, I'm doing something else, and I have that noise in the background, so it's a layered thing. But if I was going to sit and watch a movie, like apparently they're re-releasing Titanic for the 25th anniversary remaster or whatever. Xanthi's obsessed with Titanic. She so wants to go and see it. And I was like, oh my goodness, like in a cinema, that means I'll have no phone. I'll have to watch it again for the umpteenth time. But, when you go to a cinema experience, like for me now, it's like it has to be something I totally want to see. Otherwise, I'll just wait for it on a streaming service so I can, half zone out to it.
Yep. It's definitely a thing. The other habit, which tying to the food one that you raised before, which people may have already crossed their mind, could be consumption of a drink, coffee, soft drinks, those sorts of things. Is it self-soothing to sit and smell a coffee or sip a tea or whatever and just go, and actually how much of whatever it is, no matter what the self-soothing thing is it the moment? Like, I'm not a coffee drinker, full disclosure. I do not drink tea. I do not drink coffee. I don't begrudge anyone else who does. From a young age, I saw my mum very addicted to coffee, and I made a conscious choice of I'm not going there. I saw her very addicted to Coke, as in Coca-Cola, once upon a time as well. Again, in my childhood, she doesn't drink either any or, if at all, it would be a tiny amount now and hasn't done for a long time. But I saw that, and I saw how much I was drawn to sugar in particular as an addiction, as a young kid and adult. Again, now I definitely would identify as a sweet tooth, definitely have a propensity, but I just don't self-soothe in the same way that I used to with these things. And I know some people who will have coffee after coffee, and it's a coping mechanism. But I tell you what, 10 minutes later, they're back to it. And it's like, why? Because it's a coping mechanism. And it's I think everybody is aware that too much of anything is not good for us. So that's when it really can become a self-harming thing. Is it that you want the calm and the smell and the serenity of breathing in that coffee, of sipping it, of whatever? And I'm using coffee as one thing, it could be any. Or can you find another way to soothe that need and to identify, okay, what's getting me elevated into that fight or flight or whatever scenario whereby I'm trying to hide away by drinking lots of coffee or drinking soft drink, whatever it is, because there's a habit in that you may be able to actually approach from a different perspective rather than demonizing yourself, like you were talking about before, about the guilt that goes with it. Don't go cold turkey on coffee or other things like that. It's not going to help you. It's only going to make you more stressed out. And from someone who's married to a person who had a significant coffee intake, who then decided after something was said about coffee intake to stop cold turkey and not tell anyone, that was an interesting experience.
That would have been the experience. But you've raised a great
now
point
drinks
there,
it again.
because how many of our habits are ritualistic? I was reading recently Dark Night of the Soul by Thomas More, and he was speaking about how, generationally and over time, humans have moved away from many of our rituals and many of our, things that we did in a ritualistic manner. But we've replaced them. Like, our need for ritual has been now met with addictions. And it could be substance addictions, food addictions, that kind of thing. And with any of these behaviors, the point that you just raised, what is it about the thing? Like coffee, is it that you get to sit down and just smell the aroma? I'm not a coffee drinker either, never have been. I've only ever tried coffee once in my life, and it was International Roast. And according to my husband, who's a coffee connoisseur, it doesn't count. He's like, this doesn't count. And someone said to me once, I'd never get through uni without becoming addicted to coffee. And as soon as someone tells me that I can't do something, I'm like, watch me. So I've never been interested, but I'm quite a good barista apparently, because I do make it for my husband. But anyway, watching him, the smell, the way his shoulders relax, and that first sip, he's like nectar of the gods. And I'm a bit like that with my chai. And it's just like that moment, that calm, that allowing yourself the peace. And I am quite a fond dessert eater, hence talking about Cinnabon and vanilla slice. But it's that first bite, maybe two. Then after that, it's satisfying and you're just eating it because it's there or whatever. Hence why even though I am quite a dessert connoisseur, I never make them, because I'll eat them because they're there. I know my limits. But if I go out, I'll share it or buy the small serving or whatever, because it's that first part that I know that I really enjoy. And I think leading back to the topic of, self-soothing versus self-harm, another point we were talking about before we hit record, and we may end up doing a whole episode on this. We'll see, what people's responses are and where we go. There are things, fitness trackers. I'm currently wearing a Fitbit. It's funny. I was an avid Fitbit wearer. And if you've read my book, there's the chapter where I threw it out. Heart rate monitor, Fitbit, everything. I just chucked it all out. When I bought this new Fitbit last week, and I synced it to my phone, it's like, oh, your last sync was like 2014. And I was like, it's been nearly a decade. But all the data was there because I became obsessive. Like, it would be 10 o'clock at night and I hadn't reached my target yet. So I'd be walking laps around our little apartment and Jeremy would be like, what are you doing? Just go to bed. So it wasn't in service anymore. It wasn't a self-soothing or a helpful thing. It became an obsession. Hence why I threw it all out. And now, watching myself kind of not lean into the obsessional parts of it, but like I was walking the kids the other day to school, and on the way home, normally I take the shortcut, and I was like, actually, if I go that way, it's probably going to be an extra 100 steps. So it was like, I'm wanting to, do that bit extra to walk that bit further, but noticing it where it teeters on becoming an obsession and being aware of that.
The choices around that. And I was thinking about this before, and, spidey connection between the two of us may be in action. Another one where we can do soothing versus self-harm, and I tend towards the self-harm in this one, I'm going to own it, is work ethic. So if there's a lot, and for those not watching the video, Suzanne is cringing or sort of
hiding.
Look on
I'm
her
hiding,
face.
not me.
Yeah.
No.
We would never, the two of us. I recently worked a really long day, like 14 hours almost solidly at my desk the whole time, to a point where my family ended up bringing me meals. And luckily there's a bathroom not far away, so I could just go to the toilet, come back, I have water, I have food being provided, I'm done, right? But it was on a day where multiple deadlines were trying to be completed concurrently, working with team members. It was one of those things that I didn't plan for and I'd try to avoid, truth be told. But I've noticed that over the last 4-6 months, whatever, at peak times when the stress is hitting, I can't wind down. I have to very consciously. So it's this needs doing and this needs doing. Well, all those things will be there tomorrow. It has to become very select on how I prioritize me, because it will still be there tomorrow. But does it need to be done today, or can it wait till tomorrow, rather than, I have to get that done? And so for the Friday things, they really did need to be done that day. That was just the way it was. But when I'm done, I'm as high as a kite on, there's this and this. My brain is so wired into that. And it's absolutely becoming self-harm at that stage. So then I have to kick in and consciously go, no, you need to walk away and not go on my iPad or not go on another electronic, because it's very easy for me to, even if I do a much shorter day, to then swap to another device, be upstairs and still be actually doing work on another device, whether it's a laptop or whatever. That is not healthy. That is not balanced. And so, we're here sharing because both of us have this awareness of things that we do that may not be to our own benefit. And we're encouraging you to have that self-awareness, because I'm actively working on it. And that makes a big difference. If you are just in automatic mode and just churning through whatever your thing is, okay, self-soothe. I'll get on my iPad and respond to some posts on Facebook. Yeah, that's a great way to wind down.
I think this is an excellent point. I think many of our listeners will resonate. One of my coaches that I worked with a few years ago, I realized that, brought to my attention that basically when I was taking a break by checking my email, I was not, that is, not self-soothing. That is not a break. That is simply switching activities from what's my priority to what somebody else's is. And to this day, it still comes up. There's guilt associated with it if I don't respond to anybody, like a way of our current society and instant messages and stuff. And it's funny, I'm watching 1923, which is a precursor to Yellowstone. And back then it was pen and paper in the post, and it'd be months that traveled overseas and everything. And then this lady, she's waiting for a response. And I was like, in a way, I kind of grieved for that, even though I don't really remember it because the internet came in when I was quite young. I do remember having a pen pal, but like that instant thing and the guilt that we carry. So sometimes it's like, well, I'll just respond so then I don't have to feel guilty. But it's like managing those feelings. And there was somebody, we were supposed to meet up this Thursday. Actually, supposed to meet up last Thursday, just do a Zoom catch up. But the kids were going back to school. And I said, I'll see you next week. And then they messaged and said, just getting an ETA for this week. And I'm like, look, the kids settled to school hasn't gone how I hoped. So this week's a no-go. Next week I have something else on. So it'll have to be, the following week. And they're like, yeah, sure, totally. And it was just like the relief I felt to be not someone be like expecting me to drop everything. And I think when we become too attached to our email and responding to, other people's priorities, it's another way that we abdicate and let go of our own.
Absolutely. And again, gain self-awareness on where we're doing that, and then you can start to make a change. Because if you don't have the self-awareness, you can't expect that anyone else is going to coach you or teach you or whatever. And that's not to say that you can't get benefit from booking in with Suze or joining Why Wait, or looking at your minerals and understanding what I do, or any other coach. But if you're not willing to go, hey, there's probably a precursor to why I'm feeling self-soothe, or the need for self-soothing to an excessive point. Again, finding that whatever the self-harm possibility may be, because how many people have used I'm my own worst enemy?
Oh, you hear it all the time. We all do that. And the other thing too, as you said, mentioning, booking in to Why Wait or working with yourself, your team about minerals, when you listen to these podcasts, don't clean before the cleaner. Like, if this is resonating, this is the work that both of us do in different ways and shapes and forms. But we in this podcast are giving you ideas and giving you suggestions and things to look at. But if you want to dive deeper, come see one of us or both of us and let's go. Because these are the things that, on our own, left to our own devices, a coach without a coach is like a doctor without a doctor. Like, you can't, even the best brain surgeon can't do their own brain surgery. So like when I go to my own coach and I'm like, all this stuff, and it's just the ability for them to pick it out and go, well, you're just responding to other people's priorities, not your own. It's like, oh, my mind's blown. This is amazing. You would have done this to your own client. Well, yes, true. But you can't see your own stuff because you're in it. So for anybody listening, what are the ways? And because the other thing too that I don't think we've touched on yet is sometimes the things that we enjoy get a bad rap because we let them go too far. We spend too long on the iPad. We watch too many episodes. We binge a season. We eat an entire cake. And then we're like, well, I can't have any of this. And we try and cut it out entirely. And we lose the soothing or the connected aspect of the part of it that we actually enjoy.
For sure. You mentioned gardening before. That's another thing where that exact thing can happen, right? If someone is gardening inclined, or they go, COVID, ooh, bit of food problems. I'm going to clear everything. I'm going to put garden beds in. I'm going to grow my own food. And then the dirt's not right or something's not right. Plants don't survive. Think of that cycle of I guess, harm from, well, I can't garden. I don't, I'm no good at this stuff. I can't do this. Whereas if you go and meet with community people, like I'm in community groups. I've been a gardener for all of my life to some degree or another because of grandparent involvement. Haven't been actively gardening the whole time, but it's always been there playing in the back of my mind, and I make choices on it. But one of the best things to help me in the garden here was to start getting involved in local community things. And I could do that without going to an obsessive state. And so gradually we've been improving soils and doing things here. Then last year, I've been involved in the local community groups for a few years now. And I decided to move some garden beds. Well, I could ask for others' help on that before making a big decision. We move stuff, But that's meant that it's able to be sustained. Whereas I know others who have gone and done huge, big overhauls. It's a huge lot mentally and physically. And the chance of injury, like you mentioned for your back, you can injure yourself by doing something physically that you're not ready for or whatever, or become really depressed because your garden doesn't look the way because your knowledge hasn't caught up with where.
Because your garden doesn't look like the Better Homes and Gardens magazine or the TV show, and you're like, I suck at this, Quitsville.
Yeah. This is where we need to edit in a picture of my garden right now, which is half dead because it's been really hot and whatever else. And I haven't put a lot of time into it over summer because of pests and other challenges. And I've just not had the time, or I have not chosen to focus the time that I do have on it.
But I love that highlight right there. Firstly, I haven't chosen to focus on it. Like it's, ownership. Secondly, the skill set that you have developed before will mean that you can get back into it, whether it be gardening, whether it be exercising. Like muscle memory is totally a thing. Like I have recently restarted exercising, like seriously, in the last 2 weeks. I've always dabbled and walked, but I mean like seriously. And the goal that I set was this distance in 4 weeks. And then after the first 5 days, I was like, I can do this in 3 weeks. And then after the first 10 days, my daughter was like, Mummy, we can nail this in 2 weeks. So it's amazing. The body remembers. And, when there's a skill set that we've had before, we can bring it back a lot faster. And if it's a skill set we haven't yet cultivated by being in community of like-minded people, hence being in Y Weight or your thing that, might be coming, it's like you're not alone. There's other people who get you. There's other people who support you, encourage you, cheerlead you, and pick you back up when, the invariably stumbles happen.
Exactly. And keep it at the healthy self-care level, not getting to the obsessive state where it may, if things don't go the way that you want, maybe very, very stressful, lead to more depressive or, strain on your mental health. If you set your mind on doing something and that's not to say to work hard towards a goal by any means. It's more whatever it is, whether it's gardening or otherwise, if you go, I'm going to get this done by this date, and it's not actually within your skill set and whatever, and then you get really stressed. I know a number of people where, well, I didn't achieve it, so I'm no good. So then they move on to the next thing. Well, hang on a minute. If you can join a community, learn a bit more, again, like-minded people, help you feel more realistic on where you should be at. And I use should very, I don't like that word.
I know what you mean.
It can give us perspective that we can't see within our own brain, within our own everything. And human beings need, you said ritual, we need other people. We're built to be around other people. Now, I'm not saying introverts be forced outside into the because I get that need for recharge by ourselves as well. But
connection,
I really think,
as opposed to, so the other thing, you're mentioning the ritual. So back to that book, this is what I read out in Why I Wait the other day, and I still have the book close by, so I'll share it, from The Dark Night of the Soul from Thomas More. He says, you may be so influenced by the modern demand to make progress at all costs that you may not appreciate the value in backsliding. And to me, that just gave me goosebumps, because when we backslide, when we were fit and now we're not, when we had an amazing garden and now it's half dead, when we were like doing something so well and then we had the invariable backslide, because it happens, we could use that as a way to beat ourselves up, or we could use it like, this skill set is still there. I've just got to polish it up again and let's go. I'm not relearning. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. And as you said, we don't have to jump to the next thing. So often we overlook what we've already learned and the skill sets we already have, looking for the new one that's never going to fail, instead of going, hey, look, the garden's half dead, but I've got a trowel, let's go. Or, hey, I'm kind of unfit, but, I've been fit before, I know what to do. And meeting yourself where you are right now and gently encouraging yourself forward. Like, as I said, when we started that challenge, I was like 4 weeks to reach this goal, then 3, then 2. But if I'd started with, I'm going to do this in 2 weeks, and like smashed out that many kilometers on the first day, I probably would have just laid in bed the next day.
Yep. Exactly. I think we've covered a lot on this. If you're listening to this or watching it and want us to cover some other aspect, I think this could totally be a part 1. And if need be, we get enough feedback and we can cover some other things. But
yeah, I think this has been a brilliant series. So let us know what's been your biggest takeaway. Let us know what part you'd like us to dive further into. And if you haven't yet left, that's hard, 2 words that should not go together, as a rating or review, please do. As a podcast that helps us to reach more listeners, we know that you are picking up what we're putting down and that you're enjoying it. And as always, if you have any suggestions for different topics, we love them coming in. We've actually got a little master list and we have been popping them on there. So if your idea hasn't come through yet, it will. We have a list.
Yep. Absolutely. Thanks for listening or watching, whatever, however you absorb this information, and look forward to next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.